here we are. What do you know? SEO is now cool, so we're all happy. So, and what we're going to talk about is how design can actually start fulfilling all those things that Tim has been talking about this morning. Firstly, I'm going to talk a little bit more about mindset and how we think about this, and a little bit more about how and why it's important to be interested in people. We're then going to start looking at your in-house stuff, how we're going to make that as Google-friendly as we possibly can. And then we're going to move over to this area, which, again, Tim covered in a little bit, and the process of how we go about designing stuff for that area, and the kind of cool stuff that works and the kind of stuff that doesn't. So how can we use design to improve our SEO? Well, first step is, as Tim mentioned earlier, we've got to get in the right mindset. These are the signals collectively from that sitemap that Google is listening for now. And the interesting thing about them is they're not particularly technical. They're all human responses. As we said, it's about people now. And the great thing about design is it is about expressing all of these. Graphic communications forever have been about how we can communicate with people, and particularly in marketing, how we can express emotion about a product rather than just saying, you know, for instance, perfume adverts are a great example. They're never about what it actually smells like. It's always trying to express some kind of feeling about it. So what's the secret then to using design to try and communicate all these? What is it that's going to pique people's interest? What is it that's going to get people interested in us through what we create, and also, therefore, what Google is interested in? And there's no real secret to it. It's been around forever. This is the earliest quote I could find. And the fact is, if we're interested in people, people are interested in us. And again, it's stemming right back. Designers have had to embrace this ever since they started college. It's about making sure something that communicates and making sure that it's delivering the right kind of message. And in terms of influencing, in terms of how we communicate our brand, again, if you've not read this book, I suggest you do. It's one of the best defining definitions, if you like, of how to engage. And it's from 1934. And if you want to put this into test, you could probably do it within the next week or so, is go onto Twitter. And for Twitter, don't actually tweet anything out about yourself for a week. Instead, just start responding to people, jumping on hashtags, things like that, and then see how many followers you get off the back of that. Actually take something out to the conversation. I've tried it, it works, and it's a really great fundamental principle. If you want to get people interested in you, you've got to get out there and start thinking about them. Because, importantly, really, a brand isn't anything that you put out there. It's not your logo, it's not your products, it's not your service. A brand is the emotional response that someone else has about you. And you can talk about yourself as much on your website, you can talk about as much about yourself in your marketing, but ultimately, Google doesn't really want to know about that. It wants to know what other people are saying about you. And so it's so important that we're getting your brand out there in a really positive way, and we do that by taking an interest in other people and your audience and your customers. And when it comes to creativity, I love this quote from the old man Walt Disney. And essentially, it's a great mantra for any designer, really. As whatever you create, you can make it as beautiful as you want, but unless it's got some kind of substance or meaning to someone, there's no point making it. And so with all that in mind, just reinforcing the fact that whatever we design, whatever we're going to go out there and create, whatever our website has to be, it has to be about other people, not about you. And to summarize, really, I mean, again, just reinforcing what Tim said, stop thinking in terms of about us. And I put that in quotes because I don't think there's a website out there that doesn't have an about us section. How many have sections entirely dedicated to discovering more about the actual person that's hit the site? And we've got a couple of examples of that a little bit later. Listen to your audience and take it as sincere interest. Do have something to contribute. And tailor your entire digital presence in terms of design to their needs. So whenever you're designing an interface, try and think about what they're there to do. And by doing that, you're going to influence this zero moment of truth, which is Google's golden egg, if you like. Next thing is get your own house in order. We've got to look at your own website. It's the first and most important place that Google's going to look to see what you are like. And it affects a ton of things. It's not just there to look good. We've got to think about things like, do people trust you? Are people converting? Are they engaging with your site? They're only going to do that if that design is focused around what they need. But before we can go away and start designing anything, it's really important to know, well, someone's hit my website, they've searched for me, they've hit there. It's really important to understand how they are actually reading your web page, because the fact is they don't. You can have as much text on there as you want, and really all they're doing is scanning the page to try and pick out very specific signals. Studies show you've actually got about 3.8 seconds, and in that time you've got to make sure that you're engaging with that user. You've actually got to, beg your pardon, you've got about 3.8 seconds. I actually jumped ahead a bit there. And the reason why that is we all suffer from something called analysis paralysis, which I'm glad I got out straight. And that is, if you've never heard of it before, when you're faced with too many choices, when you're faced with too much information, you take in none of it and you make no choices. So what we need to make sure is when someone hits that site, we're proving our relevance as quickly as possible. And this is why we stereotype. We create these mental shortcuts so that we can classify things as quickly as we possibly can. And this is why we find design so interesting, particularly infographics. That's why people are drawn to them, because it's presenting information often that's very complex in a really simple visual way. So we've got 3.8 seconds, and in that time, our web designer's actually got to, firstly, portray relevance. So is it relevant to the search that's been done? Are you answering the question that I've asked? Are you right for me? And also, do I actually trust this website? Does it look credible? Does it look like this is just a fly-by-night operation? Can I trust these people with my money? Because this is what happens if you don't. Google actually has a metric called return to search, which I think Patrick's going to explain in a little bit more detail later on. If you hit a site and go straight back to the search results because it's not what you were looking for, whether you're conscious of whether you know why it was right or not, Google's picking up on that, and part of the Panda algorithm, it's going to say you did not satisfy that user, and it's going to start devaluing your site based on that metric. Likewise, if you've got a great engagement on your site, it's going to start giving you credibility. So it's really important that in that time frame that we're really connecting with the user. So the first one is we've got to establish relevance. These are huge, huge topic areas, and I've tried to make them as succinct as possible without getting into too much detail. We could be here all day. But some real simple 101 stuff is have a real simple, clear opening proposition that can be quickly read. You usually see it in quite bold, strong type, where it really gets to the point. It's not being ambiguous. Use relevant quality imagery. It's not enough to use stock photography. It's got to be relevant about your product or someone using that product or the kind of person that is using that product. Visually outline benefits. Benefits are a great one. Benefits are better than features. But again, still, if you can outline what is great about this product in a visual way, people can quickly just pick out those points, usually see it maybe in terms of an icon or something like that. Then people are going to quickly see that, and they can pick out why it is they should stay on this site. And give the user what they're looking for, and there's different ways of doing this. We've got we've got an interesting example a little bit later. And the don'ts really is the opposite to all those, I guess you'd call it, but large amounts of text that no one's going to read. Still, to this day, a lot of people are very guilty of that. Sell hard from the outset. You've got to give people a reason to buy before you can actually start asking them to buy. Be ambiguous in your messaging. A lot of people can talk in marketing bump or fluff that doesn't really mean anything. Unclear call to actions where they're not sure what they should do next. And focus the content about you. A very quick example of a really good way of doing this. I'm not even going to bother talking to you because it should be obvious what all those things do. You immediately know what that company does. They've got a really simple proposition. The image says everything you need to know about it, how it works, how it interfaces with your phone, someone actually using it. They've got benefits clearly listed out. Within a second, you know whether that is the right site for you or not. And there's a lot of ugly sites out there, but I wanted to put in one which you might not think about as being a bad example, because it is actually quite a nice design. They've used simple imagery, really clean layout. But actually, what on earth do they do? Why should I stay on this site? This message just means absolutely nothing. And I'm sure their marketing people are really happy with it, but as soon as someone who comes onto the site, if you've never had any experience with this brand before, you've got no idea what you're there to do, why you should use them, and why you should even carry on. So the next thing we want to do is establish trust. It might sound a little bit fluffy, a great-looking site, but to be honest, it's like what makes a song great. We don't know. If it was that simple, we'd all be making hit records. But the fact is, we do respond to this, and we know why we like something. We know why something looks good, but we might not even be able to articulate why. We know when something feels good. We know when something looks right, and it's just for a really good designer to interpret that for you. But there's also some signals that we can put on there, such as social proofing, which is really just the simple thing of having stats to show that other people have used the service and been happy. And it might be the kind of brands that use your service. It might be statistics to show customer satisfaction. Could be reviews, great reviews, 5-star reviews, things like that. Also authoritative content. So if you've got how-to guides, things like that, great blog pieces, instills a confidence in people where you can see that you're a lot more trustworthy. Accreditations and awards obviously speak for themselves. Case studies, a lot of people want to see, again, it's part of the social proofing, I guess, but they want to see that you've gone out and you've done this, you've answered someone else's question and you've done it really well. Really important to bring that kind of content to the fore. And real photography, as I touched on earlier, it's been proven to have something like a 200% more effective than stock photography. If you can show real, if you're a house interior designer, they want to see your work. They don't want to just see a beautiful interior. They want to see what you have done. And if you can even have the people that you've done it for in those photos, even better. People are going to convert much more. And responsive and mobile friendly, which we'll come to as a much bigger piece in a moment. If you hit a site on your phone and you see that it is optimized for your phone, the user can see that you've actually taken an active interest in your experience, and people are much more likely to stay on there. We've got some great stats about that later. And again, a lot of these are the opposite of what we've got over here. Poor content. Unsupported technology is a big one. Flash on an iPad, classic example. Video formats, things like that. A lot of these will stop people dead in their tracks. Under construction, and lots of 404 pages, as David talked about earlier, will just stop people and then probably won't come back because they'll just see that as irrelevant. No mobile support, again, comes back to this one. And no security assurance. So, for instance, if you're a retailer online, if you're selling something online, have you got the right kind of signals on there, like the VeriSign, things like that? And also, are there any... are we communicating anything that there is a customer service behind this as well? So if you're not happy, we can make you happy, that kind of thing. And apologise if you've seen me speaking before, but I always use Wonga as an example of people doing this just so well. Just going from top to bottom, you can actually start seeing the things that we've just talked about. So first thing they're doing is, welcome to Wonga, we can send you up to £400 within 5 minutes. A really clear, simple proposition, and that's all they say about themselves. Next thing they're straight into is asking the user questions. They've stopped talking about themselves at this point. They're now asking you, well, you tell us what you're here to find out. You can use a nice little bit of interface to set your parameters, and immediately you've got a response. So the user has found what they are looking for. Now, it might not be the right price, it might not be, but you've immediately put the right information that's relevant to them right in front of them, and we're only 500 pixels down the homepage. Only a subtle call for action. They're not going crazy, saying, big starburst saying, go now, please, 50% off, anything like that. Really quite an understated call to action. They made it a separate colour so it stands out. And that's Usability 101. Again, breaking down the information, so they're being very open and transparent about how they've come to this price. And then as soon as you get to this point, if you haven't already made your decision by then, they're now bringing into these trust signals. So they've got authority content, so they're explaining how all these things work. They're not trying to hide their APR, these incredible number of APRs, but they're actually trying to explain this is why. Next thing you've got is a social proofing. This actually is a bit of a carousel, so it brings up quite a number of different stats, showing great satisfaction surveys. Lots of people have used us. you can see there we've got 30,000 respondents, so a lot, you can see this isn't based on 100 people, this is based on a lot of people using our service. And then again, asking questions of the user, is this right for you? Well, we can tell you with a bit more authority and trust content there. And again, I'm sure that's just FSA stuff, but then you've got your awards and accreditations down the bottom. It's no wonder they're dominating. You will see everyone else copying this now. But there's a kind of design formula that just ticks all the boxes. And I'm still getting, they've actually kept this site for years now. They haven't changed it. They haven't really had to. And you'll see a lot of people in the same sector now just outright copying it. They did actually try and copyright the interface. There's no way it was ever going to happen because you can't copyright a slider or a value. But they knew they were onto something and they wanted to make it their own. So we've engaged the user, we've managed to keep them on the site for more than 3 seconds. Hooray. So what's next? Well, the next thing is we've got to get them to the end of that journey. It's not enough to just keep them there. We've got to make sure that they get to the end and we are actually delivering something. And this is where we need to start looking at conversion rates. If you don't know what conversion rate is, just in case, it's you take your traffic, they hit your site, how many of them actually go on to achieve a goal that you've set, whether that's buying something, downloading something, getting in contact. We then express that as a percentage. So if you've got 1,000 visitors a month coming, 100 of them go on to purchase, you've got actually quite a healthy conversion rate of 10%. And remember, Google wants actually the full picture of all this. So it wants to know not just that you're engaging the user to begin with, but you're actually going on to fulfill. And because if Google sees that you're actually, for a particular term, you're converting really well, then you must be doing something right. So what he wants to do is make sure those having a good experience on the site are actually, again, those sites are going to start ranking higher because they clearly have a better customer satisfaction. So it's really important that we need to make sure that the site is designed really well for conversion. People are not just coming onto your site and being interested, they're then going on to actually purchase or download or whatever it is you want. And then further than that on, we start talking about the experience after that. So they want to know the traffic that's going to your site, they want to see how well it's converting, and then they want to hear what people are actually talking about that service straight after. And analytics can cover these first two, and then the zero moment of truth, well, that's open in the open sphere anyway. So it is there to get the full picture, so it's really important that we make sure this part is working really well, and again, that's where design starts to support. So we've got to make sure it's usable. Now, usability is this behemoth of an area. Again, we'll never cover it all now, so I've tried to break it down into the most simplistic terms. Just to give you some reasons of why that's important. If it's difficult to use, people leave. If it doesn't state what the company offers, again, that simple opening proposition, people will leave. If you get lost or if the information is hard to read or it's poor quality content, people leave, and then Panda starts picking up on this, that you're suddenly then going back and trying that search again because you did not deliver. Again, it's a massive, massive discipline, and there's probably people that can talk about it in way more authority and much more detail than me, but this, again, really simple 101 stuff. I mean, just to give you an idea of the kind of size it is, I mean, we've put information architecture in there, is it right? David's already spoken today, and just to see how complex that bit can be, and that's only a small part of it. It's a huge, huge area, and it's really important that you make sure that you're very familiar, no, you don't have to be an expert, but at least you're familiar with the really simple principles of usability. Is it easy to navigate? Does it conform to best practice? There's lots of best practice guides out there, which I won't go through entirely now. Is your checkout easy to use? Are you seeing a lot of drop-off at your checkout? Are forms too big? Things like that. Are you asking for superfluous information? You can even have a degree of mistrust from forms. So if you're asking just to download a brochure, why are you asking for my telephone number? It doesn't make any sense. And bring that user goal-orientated content to the fore like Wonga are doing. So find out what that user is looking for and keep testing. I've been preaching testing for years and still not enough people do it. Google Analytics has an A/B split testing capability that is really easy to set up. If you've never used A/B testing before, essentially what you can do is present two versions of the same page at the same time. So 50% of your visitors will get to see one version, 50% will see another. You can see how many actually convert on one page compared to another, and then you can switch to that one. And you don't even have to know why sometimes, why these increments in performance are happening. They're just happening. The business is making more money and everyone's happy. So it could be that you drop a couple of form elements out of a form. You could change the colour of a button. You could go down to that kind of granular detail. You could change the whole layout of a page if you wanted to. And again, poor usability experience, again, actually reflects almost identically back to the list we've just been looking at. So again, unsupported technology. I've seen sites where the form has been written in Flash, for instance, and there's just no need for it. Unnecessary obstruction, so for instance, trying to do data capture before you can take the next step. There's a famous case study by Amazon. Well, they don't claim it's by Amazon, but it's clearly by Amazon. Where at the first point, as soon as you went to check out on your basket, it was asking you either to log in or create an account. And they've seen a huge drop-off, and they actually added the third step, which you'll probably be familiar with now, which is kind of a guest checkout. Within the first 12 months of that, they saw an increase of $300 million a year worth of conversions. So just small things like that you can take out and see really dramatic effects. Cluttered design is usually the effect of people trying to get too much information onto one page, so the user loses focus of the goals. And again, not making sure that's actually should be a benefit for us. So not making sure that the relevant content at that time is not in front of the user. So it should, for instance, one goes making sure that all you need right there at that time is there in front of you, and it's just pushed everything else out of the way. Pop-ups are another conversion killer. And of course, we were going to get to it anyways, is this aspect of responsive, which is probably the biggest challenge at the moment that people are experiencing, because they've got a site, we've now got to make sure it's working on mobile. It's actually quite a big investment, because you've got to perhaps think about rebuilding your site from scratch. A lot of existing legacy HTML won't be suitable, or indeed the design won't be suitable. If you're not familiar with what responsive is, it's just the ability to make sure that your site is properly usable and has as good experience as possible on as many devices as possible. And the term responsive really just comes from its ability to respond to whatever you are looking at it on. And Google have issued clear guidelines on this already. There's a link there which you can get once the slide shares are sent out. But if you want it before, you can email me and I can send it around to you. It's quite techy, but it's clear. They have expressed exactly what they're expecting to see. So it's important. They know it's important to the user in terms of experience. And we should be really starting to pay attention to that. So responsive is just not an option anymore. We have to do it. You've got three options. Now, fully responsive is where, and these are laid out in the guidelines, I should add. So fully responsive is where, hopefully I'll try and keep it as layman as possible. So you've got your device or laptop, whatever it might be, and you've got the web server. The device makes a request for a web page. It sends one page back, and that page actually has the intelligence to scale and resize and fit to that device as soon as it hits it. The other two options are usually only appropriate if you've got quite an advanced architecture, or you've got advanced functionality which just simply won't work across platform from laptop. So for instance, drag and drop is always a difficult one, but it might be that there's a necessity to it. So what you've got there is then a couple of options where you've got the request is made from the device to the server, and the server says, actually, you're looking at this on a mobile, so here, have this page. And so you're actually getting a slightly different version than the laptop one, as you would. And that means you can tweak things and make sure the functionality is right for that device. And the same for the mobile version is where you will often see this, usually with retailers, because it's a lot easier for them to do, I think, which is you'll actually have a mirror site almost. So you've got two versions. You usually see it like m. brandy3.com or something like that. So you're actually looking at a different version of the site. And it doesn't matter which one of those you take, you will see massive results. A few examples I pull out here. Bench saw they doubled their mobile conversion, so they're actually doubling the amount of business they're doing from mobile and tablet devices. And I should say as well, these aren't over a year, these are within days and weeks. This is really, really fast results. Baines and Ernest, again, great mobile conversion increase. Career Builder, this is where it starts to get a bit more interesting, because they had a 20% increase in click-through rate, so you're starting to see improvements in their actual marketing efforts. And the most interesting one at the end there, which is Harvestian Brewery. It's just a small independent brewery, and within a couple of days of their mobile site going live, this is a responsive site as well, by the way, they actually saw a 28% increase in traffic. That's without doing anything else. So Google is paying attention. This is without looking at conversions or anything like that. As soon as they started with the mobile site, the traffic went straight up. But beware, there is very technical. Fully responsive isn't too bad. If you need to go for one of the others, make sure you're getting the right people to do it, because when you start looking at double versions of pages, there's a huge risk of Panda catching you, and if it's not correctly implemented, Panda will just see duplicate content, and you're going to get stung by having a mobile site, which seems ridiculous. But again, on those guidelines, there is very clear and developer-related code that says, right, this is how you should set this up, because Google needs to know that, well, this page over here actually has a mirror page over here, so please don't count that one. And again, it's all meta information in the page, so it just needs consideration. Don't just jump into it and, all right, I'm going to make a mobile version of my site today. You could end up shooting yourself in the foot. A quick example, and this is more to do with thinking about how you can be creative about relevance and trust and engagement, I guess. This is a site designed for Sheffield College. As you can imagine, as a massive educational institution on a really old site, and because there's so many departments, so many people that want to market how good their courses are, the homepage was just a complete mess. It was full of text and links through to different departments, different explanations. Everyone was vying for attention. There was even the Board of Governors wanted their bit on there. And so we went along and we spoke to them, and we broke it down into how people were reaching the site and who they needed to appeal to and what were the core goals, and we tried to focus it right down. And we went right down as far as this, so really all it leads with is a big opening image, and of course we made it responsive. But the interesting part was, first thing we did was lead with authority content. So someone hit the page and there's something there bragging about proving how good the college was. So for instance, this chap who got an award, and again, bringing in the huge imagery there. And the next thing we do is then start trying to find out more about the user. So we realised there was 3 kind of core user groups that they had. Those that were leaving school and going on to further education, but then they also had a large amount of adult learners, if you want to call them, and also businesses that wanted their team training. So then we start qualifying that, and then click through on those pages, and you start to get information that's tailored towards that. Before we've even got to the courses, what we want to do is explain the benefits. So if I'm leaving school, I want to know what the student bar is like, things like that. Whereas if I want to better myself, it can start talking about much more relevant things like how flexible the learning is. But what was interesting was that what we thought was, well, if we streamline this content, we can actually go a step further in making whatever it is relevant. If we know someone's landed on this page by searching for a fashion course, for instance, fashion courses in Sheffield, we should be able to know that and dynamically change this. So if you were to, what we did is we built it in Sitecore and built the functionality to respond the site based on not just the device, but how people are actually arriving at the site. So suddenly now all this changes to a picture of a catwalk with people walking down it, showing how the students have won an award for the fashion show that year. It's immediately relevant. It's showing their authority through the awards that they've won. And it's showing that the user immediately that, well, if I go to there, I can get some kind of success. And again, these change too. So, are you a school leaver fancying a career in fashion? Are you looking to change careers into fashion? Are you a fashion house that needs to train up your staff? We can tweak it all according to how the user arrives at the site, and immediately it's way more relevant, and we haven't even got past the homepage. And a couple of other things as well, making sure the success stories, again, authority content came to the top. So again, it's just a small change in thinking and a little bit of technical ingenuity, and we can actually create something really relevant really easily. Summarise then, I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer when you say it like that, but make your site as good as it can be. It really is that simple. A lot of people still live with a legacy site that is actually way out of date and focus on, well, actually, I've got to get these links, or I've got to be out there, building SEO authority. clean up your own site first, get it as good as it can be, because that's your platform for everything else. It acts as your content hub, it acts as your brand representation, and it shows Google how well people are interacting with you. And you can do that by streamlining your pages to be engaging and relevant, and most of all, make sure that it's responsive. If you go away and do nothing else, is make sure that you're ready for mobile. Not even ready, mobile's here, everyone's using it. So you've just got to make sure that your site accommodates it. So we've done that bit. It was easy, right? We've got a site looking as good as it can be. We're giving off all these great signals to Google. We've now got to deal with this bit. And this is really an extension of what Tim was talking about earlier. And it's a little bit more about perhaps the process of which we do it. Where do we start? So, as Walt says, we've got to make sure it's about the people. Whatever we design, it's about the people. So we've got to know our target audience inside out, and it's really easy to do. A lot of people have marketing demographics already, and they already understand a lot about their users, so you've got a platform to go from them. But if you don't, then use your social channels. If they're not there for talking to your audience, what are they there for? You can conduct surveys to find out from your audience. You can do that through social media. And listen to the results. Really simple thing, just listen to what people are talking about, because it can be that it can be quite opportunist. If suddenly something comes up in the news that day, can you jump on it? But above and beyond, we're out there to find out what they're interested in, so we can create something really cool based off the back of that. What can you contribute? Again, we've kind of covered some of these. So you might have some data in-house that you can start applying results to. So if, for instance, you've got a house comparison site, like we looked at Rightmove earlier, they must have a ton of data that they can use, and they'll go and apply it to where do the most people live in terms of house size and things like that. They can actually produce really intricate data sets that we can use to create infographics, interactive tools, things like that, without giving away personal data, but actually they can create some really useful stuff. And if you don't have that, then go out and do your own research and start applying that to the conversations that we've had. So we know what people are talking about, and we've got perhaps some stuff that we can use, whether it's data, surveys, anything like that. It might be other assets like photography that you have. It's then time to go away and like, what the hell are we going to build? And this is where this interdependent thinking, I guess, comes into it. Because now you can see what all these things that surround this kind of brainstorm of what we're going to create are actually falling now into a PR camp. Because whatever we make, we've got to make sure it's at least one of these for it to get traction in any kind of social or viral nature. You could be provocative. You want to be careful. Does an airline want to get involved in the debate about should people pay more for airline seats, something like that? They get a lot of traction on it because people will pick that up online. Of course, you've got to be careful about brand. You're never going to fulfill all of these, so you've just got to try and see what fits and what you can provide. But as long as it kind of attaches itself to one of those, then you're probably going to have something that will cause some traction. And again, this is where you need your creatives working with your SEO guys, working with your PR guys. And this is what we're talking about when it's this interdependency now. It's not enough to have SEO over there. Everyone's got to be involved. And then what can we go away and create? So falls into two camps, I guess. First one is the kind of stuff that you would expect to embed somewhere else on a third-party blog. So this one, for instance, is one we created for View, which is an infographic called Battle of the Bruces. Die Hard 5, I think it is, the latest one, was coming out. So we just created something fun to share, which was the Bruce Lee versus Bruce Willis, who'd win in a fight. Obviously, it's Bruce Lee. But we did actually consider all the possible scenarios and body counts and things like that. Again, people could just embed it on the blog because it's a bit of fun. You don't even see the word View until you get to the bottom. So you just know that it's them that produced it. People can start talking about it online. Because this is one of the good provocative ones, because what it is provoking a response, because anyone that's an action fan will have an opinion on it. So you're provoking a response from people, and it did cause a lot of debate on blogs. Oh, I think Bruce would win because he's this. Oh, Bruce Lee, obviously. So there's that kind of stuff. And then there's the other type, which is where you're building tools or applications or games actually on your site, and then as long as it's good enough, then people will hopefully start talking about it and linking back to it, saying, have you seen this? Or I've just achieved this. So for instance, at the end of this journey, I was Tony Hutchins out of Hollyoaks, by the way. I don't know if there's a similarity, but for instance, you got to that point, and then you had the ability to share, so you click share, and then it sends out a tweet saying, I was Tony Hutchinson, and Hollyoaks, which one are you? People click on the links, and of course it starts that nature where everyone's then talking about your site. Google picks up on that, and everyone's happy. And I thought I'd mention quickly about the tools that are out there to kind of do this at the minute, because we are creating some very interactive and fancy stuff. Flash just isn't an option anymore. Adobe are going to bin it, and they're replacing it. I don't know if you've heard of any of these, but if you have designers or you are a designer, you should be picking up on these now. They're very much in their infancy, but it's called the Edge Suite. And these two in particular, Edge Animate, which is Adobe's Flash killer, so it's in exactly the same kind of design environment, exactly the same kind of tools that all the designers that used to Flash are using, and they basically ported it over so it exports HTML and CSS, and that will work on any device now. So you can create these really wonderful interactive pieces, an example of which I'll show you in a minute, and you know it's going to be absolutely device agnostic, so it doesn't care what it's on, it's going to work, and we can make it responsive and things like that. And then Reflow, which is, again, even more in its infancy. There's still even a couple of bugs left in there, which is more about giving designers the ability to design straight into responsive layouts. So rather than Photoshop producing a PSD, which the developer would have to take and then transform into HTML and CSS, the actual environment is actually designing in HTML and CSS straight away. So you don't have a PSD file, you have an actual code file that you're editing, and you can actually drag the thing and see how it responds in different devices, and then switch out to Edge Inspect, which can then you can start previewing in different devices. I won't go through them all, but the suite's there. Adobe know about all this, and they know where the environment, they know where the industry's going, and they're providing the tools for it, so do give them a play. I think you can get free trials of them, so only free design. I'll give them a play anyway. So I'll leave with the final example, and again, it's just building a bit more and explaining a bit more about how we came up with the one for First for Lawyers. And the challenge here in particular was that they've got no data to work with, so there wasn't much we could take out. Or there's no real assets that we could use. Target audience is massive, with no real singular conversation to have. There's a little conversation around that industry, and what there is actually a little bit, that's quite a negative sentiment, but they needed to be relevant at this time. So, as you saw the example here, the Wolverine film was about to come out, so we jumped onto that. People were talking about it online already, so we knew the conversation was out there, and there's a lot of people talking about it. And so what we tried to do is just try and make that connection. So Wolverine's had a very, very dark history. And he's actually had quite a lot of injustice done to him. He had all his bones replaced with metal and claws and placed in his hands and things like that, all against his will. He must be entitled to compensation, right? So we took that further, and what other heroes or cartoon characters have it? Well, Spider-Man was bitten by a spider in a scientific lab. Surely they should have been taking much better precautions than that. Is he eligible to sue, that kind of thing? Daredevil got blinded by some radioactive something or other. Two-Face is in there, and the Fantastic Four, who got exposed to gamma radiation in space or something like that. NASA should have taken more precaution than that. And again, it's just that fun idea, but we've taken what was quite a dry, empty conversation and put them right back into the middle of something that is incredibly relevant at that time. A lot of people talking about the Wolverine film. People were very quick to pick up on this. And as you saw, we got great placement on Mashable. But despite all the shares and despite it being a great website, the interesting thing is, without that creativity, First for Lawyers just did not have reason to be on this site. They would never ever have got there without that kind of creative thinking behind it. And it just shows, you know, taking it out of your context and putting it into someone else's context and what they're talking about at that time have these fantastic effects. So overall, just to leave you on, I guess, the basic points, make your site as good as it can be, streamline all your pages, make it responsive, and get out there and start creating some really cool stuff for people. And that was me.